The air hummed, a space a few feet off the ground rippling like a calm lake disturbed by a stone thrown at its surface. Not that there was anyone around to see, which of course begged the age-old question that has baffled philosophers, scientists, and pretty much everyone with a working brain for centuries. That being, if an interdimensional fracture leading to an infinite multiverse of endlessly recurring realities opens up in a hotel resort bedroom in Mexico and nobody is there to see it, then did it really happen at all? Well, in this instance, it really did. With a flash of light, a figure came tumbling through the wormhole, fizzling out of existence in one place, only to arrive somewhere similar. Behind him, the purplish tear in the very fabric of reality sealed itself shut as quickly and inexplicably as it had opened. Sitting up, his Hawaiian shirt a disheveled mess, the man blinked through his blurred vision. Eddie Brock was unsure if his headache was the result of an intense hangover or the process of being flung between universes, seemingly at random.
"Are we back?"
A voice in the back of Eddie's head growled.
"I have no idea, pal,"
Eddie replied aloud, looking around the vacant hotel room, the last of the daylight fading as the sun set.
"We should eat,"
the gravelly voice replied.
"I'm hungry."
"That's all you ever think about," he replied. "I don't even have any money on me. Besides, don't you think we should try and figure out where we are first?"
"Nope."
In seconds, a dark, gooey substance morphed over Eddie from head to toe, encasing him and his clothes. It formed a body, a towering, hulking monster with wide, white eyes in the shape of teardrops. Its mouth was filled with rows of long, razor-sharp teeth. The black goo was constantly shifting. In fact, it was alive, an alien symbiote, bonded with its human host in order to survive. Together, the symbiote and Eddie were Venom. Bursting out of the hotel's balcony as night rapidly fell, Venom fired organic webs from his wrists and swung through the city in search of food. Agent Hardy hated fieldwork. He'd imagined working for the SCP Foundation would be full of action and thrilling espionage, and had enrolled in undercover training, hoping he'd be sent on missions to stealthily infiltrate other anomalous organizations, like the Church of the Broken God or Global Occult Coalition. Instead, he was assigned to Deep Cover, which was Foundation euphemism for stay put and keep your eyes peeled just in case you spot something unusual. He had been stationed in Mexico City and was forced to work a menial job in a tiny little convenience store to maintain cover, a waste of his advanced combat and reconnaissance training, he thought. Agent Hardy badly wanted more, and found it personally insulting that the Foundation saw it fit to waste an asset like him, while he should have been made part of one of their mobile task forces. Only adding to that perceived insult was the fact that nothing at all unusual or even remotely anomalous ever seemed to happen nearby. That is, until a 7-foot-tall, 500-pound oily black monster came barreling into the convenience store, barged its way over to the confectionery aisle, and started shoveling fistfuls of chocolate into its mouth, all before dashing back out and swinging away with as many candy bars as it could carry in one arm.
"Hardy, if somebody robbed your store, that's a job for the local police department,"
the bored-voiced Foundation operator replied over the radio as Agent Hardy contacted command.
"No, not just somebody, something,"
Hardy yelled while the store's customers ran screaming from the scene.
"It's a goddamn alien. I saw it with my own eyes. It's huge."
"Hold on one moment," the operator replied before turning to a colleague still audible over the radio. Meanwhile, Agent Hardy tapped his foot impatiently. "Didn't we get a blip near there?"
"When?"
"I don't know the exact time, about an hour ago tops."
"Any read on what it was?"
"Interdimensional disturbance?"
"Oh, could be connected." "Look, how do you want me to proceed?"
Hardy barked. Follow at a distance, Agent Hardy," the operator replied. "Be advised, do not engage with the creature under any circumstances. It could be carrying any number of unknown pathogens or diseases we don't have cures for, if it is from another universe. Strict observation only. Mobile Task Force 06 is inbound to contain your alien." Agent Hardy turned and dashed out of the store, sprinting down the street. A little way in the distance, Venom had been swinging from buildings. They were singing "I Got You Under My Skin" to themselves without a care in the world, before landing on a rooftop and starting to ravenously munch on their remaining chocolate bars.
"Oh, delicious,"
Venom growled after finishing their feast.
"So, when are we gonna work on getting back home?"
Eddie asked, half of the symbiote's protective mask retracting to show him underneath.
"This might be our home."
Venom retorted.
This planet looks the same in every universe.
Look, I really think we ought to prioritize getting out of here, the human half of them argued. That should be our priority, not feeding you.
Eddie, we've been over this. I need philethamine to live, and since you get all indignant at me for eating brains, we have to get it from a more socially acceptable source,
the alien creature replied.
Unless
what? Brock asked.
Unless you want to go find some bad guy's brains to eat,
the symbiote queried.
Hey you!
Someone yelled.
Hold it right there!
As if on cue, the sounds of weapons being locked and loaded interrupted their conversation. In the time since Agent Hardy had called it in, the Foundation's mobile task force had arrived on the rooftop. Hardy was with them, hanging back and letting the other operatives move in to apprehend the alien. Drawing themselves to their full height, Venom turned to face the approaching squad of armed soldiers, their face returning to its full, sharp-toothed form.
Bad guys?
Venom growled, grinning wildly.
Guys with guns pointed at us, I'm gonna guess probably bad guys,
Eddie answered before noticing the logo emblazed on the MTF's uniforms.
Hold up, SCP Foundation, like the Life Foundation?
Who cares?
Venom declared.
Their dinner!
Open fire!
The MTF commander yelled before being suddenly silenced. Venom had grabbed him and was beginning to close his jaws around his head. The remaining members of the task force followed their squad leader's final command and pulled their triggers. The rooftop erupted into a hail of gunfire, bullets impacting with Venom's oily form but causing no damage, bouncing off their outer gelatinous skin. They lunged at another of the MTF troopers, wrenching the man's weapon from his hands and hurling it away, before grabbing him by the ankle. With incredible strength, Venom flung the operative around in the air as if he was a ragdoll, swinging him into the other troops, sending them flying. Hanging back from the fight, Agent Hardy was trying to observe the creature's attack patterns, although it seemed to just be chaotically flinging an MTF operative around as a weapon, rather than deploying any form of actual technique. He wanted to spot an opening, a weakness, anything that could take down this hulking alien monster, but not one was presenting itself. That is, until Venom finished swinging that helpless Foundation soldier around and threw the man over their shoulder. The MTF trooper dropped limply down to street level, landing on a parked car with a loud crash and the sound of glass shattering, which was followed by the wailing of the car's emergency alarm. The screeching noise seemingly caused Venom to reel from their fight, with the MTF roaring and gripping their head to drown out the alarm. Sound, Hardy muttered to himself. Its weakness is sound. Instantly, he turned to one of the other MTF soldiers and dashed towards him, while Venom was lashing out in an enraged state. The strands of the symbiote were recoiling, exposing Eddie contained beneath. Agent Hardy grabbed the nearest Foundation operative and violently struck him in the face, taking advantage of the trooper's shock to pull his weapon out of his hands and push him towards the edge of the rooftop. He delivered another blow, feeling his fellow Foundation agent's nose cracking against his fist as he took out all his frustrations with his undercover posting. The task force operative could barely believe what was happening, too dumbfounded and in too much pain to protest. Even when he did weakly lift his arms to defend his face, Agent Hardy effortlessly swatted them away and smashed his forehead into the other agent's face, dazing him as he dragged him right up to the ledge. There was nothing between the captive soldier, just a sheer multi-story drop down to street level. Lining him up, Agent Hardy shoved the other men off the roof, so he landed on a second car. Its alarm started blaring, the horn too, as the fallen agent's body went through the windshield, adding even more loud noises to the mix. Such a deafening combination of loud sounds caused Venom to keel over, roaring in pain as the symbiote's main weakness pierced it. If the noise continued for too long, it would force Eddie and his alien accomplice to separate, and so the slimy form defensively retreated into its host, leaving him alone. Wearing a triumphant, smug look on his face, Agent Hardy marched over to the human being that was left. The alien form was gone, for now, meaning he could just raise his stolen weapon and strike Eddie hard in the face, knocking him out, ready for the Foundation to take him and the symbiote in for examination. After hours of torture that Agent Hardy had volunteered to conduct personally, the Foundation had learned that a sustained barrage of high-frequency sound waves could be used to forcibly separate the gelatinous alien life form from its host. Once they had been parted, Eddie Brock didn't need much more containment than any other average human, while the symbiote could be placed in a glass tank for the Foundation researchers to take a closer look at. The creature seems to possess a consciousness, its own mobility. It is an entirely separate entity from Mr. Brock, one of the researchers commented, observing a sample of the symbiote that they had managed to slice off the larger whole and was now slithering its way around a smaller transparent containment cube. That's pretty obvious, Poindexter, Agent Hardy retorted impatiently. Why don't you give me something useful? Well, the researcher stammered, intimidated by the imposing field operative. It appears to be rapidly deteriorating. That thing is dying? Hardy asked. It seems so. We've been able to access some of the hive mind that it shares with the rest of its kind. Apparently these, he checked his notes, Plingtar are able to share knowledge across multiple realities, but they need to remain bonded to a host in order to survive. On their own, their lifespans are much shorter, the researcher added, but it seems that once they increase the host's strength, replicate their own mass, even use more of itself to create weapons. Weapons? The agent echoed. Yes, anything. It seems some of these symbiotes could even create copies of existing weaponry that would act as an extension of itself, fully usable by the host. Thank you, Doc. That info should come in pretty handy, Agent Hardy replied. I beg your pardon, Agent? The researcher asked before Agent Hardy's hand gripping his throat silenced him. Elsewhere in the facility, Eddie Brock was yelling, demanding to be let free. His only thought was getting back to Venom, aware that his symbiote partner would wither and die if they remained apart for too long. Thanks to their bond, he knew Venom was thinking the same thing this precise moment, and it only spurred him on to try and pull himself free. He was handcuffed to a chair, barely able to move. Normally the pair of them could get out of a jam like this with no trouble. After all, things were always easier when they were together. I got you! Eddie started to sing loudly and tunelessly. Under my skin!
Quiet!
Snapped a Foundation security officer who stood nearby. I got you! He ignored the guard and continued, making his voice even louder. Deep in the heart of me, so deep in my heart that you're really a part of me. I got you! I said, quiet, the officer barked, marching over to Eddie, baton raised threateningly. With a sudden, unrelenting strike, he kicked the guard in the stomach with all the force he could manage. Winded, the officer crumpled, dropping to the floor as he gasped for air. Not letting up, Eddie kicked again. This time his boot connected with the man's jaw and knocked him out. It wouldn't last forever though. Using his legs and with a great deal of difficulty, Eddie tried to lift the handcuff keys from the officer's belt. He hardly possessed perfect coordination, meaning it required a lot of trial and error, but knowing Venom needed him made him all the more determined to try and try again. Until finally, Eddie pulled the keys up with his boots, lifted his legs so they slid down, and caught them in his cuffed hand. Freeing himself, he left the unconscious security guard cuffed in his place, before making his way through the facility as quickly and quietly as he could. It didn't matter that he had never been there before. He could sense Venom anywhere. Even though they were apart, all he had to do was follow the pull to where it was being held. However, he could have done with his symbiote partner's protection when he arrived in the lab. Something tore through Eddie's shoulder, embedding itself in his flesh. Screaming with pain, he lifted a hand to the bleeding wound, only to feel a second shot strike him in the gut. He could feel the projectile in his hand. Gritting his teeth, he pulled it out. It was a tooth, blood-soaked and fired with the force of a bullet. It was then that Eddie looked up and saw where from. Towering over him, Agent Hardy looked almost unrecognizable. He had bonded with the sample cut off of the symbiote, and it had encased his body in a suit all of his own. He had black segmented plates like armor, although with the same gelatinous, oily appearance as Venom. In his hand was what looked like a submachine gun, but was in actuality something special that the agent had requisitioned from the Foundation's anomalous armory. It was SCP-127, a weapon that, like the symbiote, was also an organic living being, capable of firing human-like teeth in the place of bullets. To make matters worse, the shred of symbiote Hardy wore had cloned its own versions of SCP-127, their handles extending into long black tendrils that protruded from the agent's back. The rest of Venom was still contained in the tank, frantically slithering against the glass, trying to free itself and get to Eddie. If it did, it could heal his injuries and make itself whole again. Stomping over to where his wounded victim lay, Symbiote-infused Hardy pulled Eddie up from the floor and lifted him to his feet, making sure he dug his symbiote-coated thumb into his wounds, making Eddie cry out in pain.
Gotta be said, Mr. Brock.
Hardy grinned sadistically.
I can see why you'd want to be merged with one of these things. The strength it gives you is amazing. Enough to make anybody take you seriously. Remind them not to underestimate you. And that's all from me getting a little piece. Imagine how strong I'll be when I'm combined with your little alien friend there.
You should know, Eddie winced. Venom's a little picky about who he hangs out with, and trust me, you're not his type.
Oh yeah,
Agent Hardy roared. With his symbiote-enhanced strength, he hurled Eddie across the lab with such force that he smashed the glass tank before colliding with the far wall and landing in a heap. Eddie was still bleeding heavily from the teeth he'd been shot with, as Venom tried in its weakened state to slide across the floor to him, only for Hardy to catch it. He lifted the rest of the dark, gooey symbiote and dangled it tauntingly over Eddie as he lay bleeding out on the floor.
You're nothing without this thing attached to you, Brock,
Hardy jeered.
In fact, even when you two were bonded on that rooftop, you were easy enough to take down. Guess even together, you two are nothing. No,
Eddie rasped weakly, reaching his hand up with the last of his fading strength. As he did, Hardy didn't notice the symbiote reaching back to its host. Together, we're... The alien lifeform gave a surge and slipped over Eddie's hand. Instantly, his gunshot wound sealed up and repaired, just as the dark, slimy form encased him once more. Standing up, catching Hardy by surprise, Venom gripped the agent by the neck.
We're a lethal protector. You feel me?
They growled, grinning and showing off their sharp rows of teeth. Venom lifted Agent Hardy up and threw him hard enough to send him crashing through the wall, landing a few feet away. Glad to have you back, came Eddie's voice.
Good to be back,
Venom replied.
Were you singing our song earlier?
Yeah, Eddie sighed. That's how I escaped. Before they could continue their conversation, Agent Hardy roared at them. Staggering back to his feet, he began firing SCP-127 at Venom, the various copies his symbiote had created, unleashing a barrage of toothy projectiles at them. They didn't ricochet off like regular bullets. In fact, they seemed to be strong enough to shred through Venom's outer symbiote skin until it had a chance to reform.
Ouch!
They roared. Oh yeah, his guns shoot teeth, Eddie warned slightly too late.
This guy sucks,
Venom growled. No arguments there, Eddie replied. You got a plan here, partner?
I am open to suggestions, Eddie,
the symbiotic half answered as they retreated from the gunfire, Hardy charging after them. The agent lunged at them, tackling Venom, pinning them down and delivering a vicious punch. The force of it split the symbiote head apart, revealing Eddie beneath.
You don't deserve this much power,
Agent Hardy yelled, lifting one of his oily black tooth-firing guns to Eddie's exposed face. Just as he fired, Venom's mask reformed, in the nick of time to protect its host. As the tooth impacted their face, both Eddie and his symbiote partner noticed something. Hardy's symbiote seemed to suffer the same damage, slickly parting and then quickly reforming. He's just wearing a part of you, right, V? Eddie asked. When we get hurt, he gets hurt. We just need to hurt him enough to get them to separate, and you can get that part of your body back. Venom lifted their head, noticing a button on the wall of the corridor. The Foundation had plenty of need for emergency alarms in case an anomaly broke containment, and sure enough, there was one labeled Activate in Case of Emergency. Raising one arm, Venom fired a line of organic web at the button. The screaming, ringing sound had both Venom and Agent Hardy writhing in agony. The symbiote began retracting from the Foundation field agent as the alarm blared. He weakly tried to crawl towards it, desperate to switch it off before his suit separated from him. A fist sailed through the air and clocked Hardy square in the jaw. Eddie had landed a hit. He'd knocked Hardy over, keeping him down for long enough so that the portion of the symbiote that had been removed leaped off of the agent's body and quickly crawled its way back to its original host. Shutting the alarm off again, Eddie was once again encased in the form of the lethal protector, and they towered over Agent Hardy, long, slimy tongue unraveling from their razor-toothed jaws. Just who the hell do you think you are? Hardy spat, enraged.
We are Venom.
Agent Hardy's screams echoed through the halls of the site, then quickly fell silent with a meaty crunch. Not long after, Venom noticed that they were starting to fade from this universe again.
Eddie, It's happening again,
Venom exclaimed. We better end up home this time. Eddie sighed as they disappeared, leaving the Foundation to clean up the mess that they'd left behind. Now go check out SCP Elite Mobile Task Force Explained and How to Work at the SCP Foundation Explained if, much like Agent Hardy, you need a crash course in how a proper SCP Foundation operative should behave.